It's a culture of exclusion rather than a culture of inclusion. And I think we need to maximize the culture of inclusion. We need to dial up as hard as we can because we need to bring more people into the space. Like the transition to Web3 is more difficult than the transition to like the internet in the beginning when like you're using AOL dial-up, and you're like, what is this? The internet? Oh, we have chat rooms, it's more of like a shift in mindset in like UX. And so the barrier to entry is big, and we need to be including people as much as possible and collaborating to learn from each other because this technology is hard. And so the thing I'm most excited about is just like the collaboration across Bitcoin and Ethereum about opening Bitcoin up and introducing new use cases, because I ultimately believe if we don't go down this path that we may never reach mass adoption.
GM, everyone. Welcome back to the NFT Now podcast. I'm Matt Medved, and today's guest is Trevor Owens, the CEO of Ninjalerts, an app for NFT trading alerts, and GP at Bitcoin Frontier Fund. He is also the host of our Not Financial Advice Twitter space every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which has become one of the best places to keep up on the Bitcoin Ordinals ecosystem. Trevor has also emerged as the leading voice in the movement. Whenever a new ecosystem launches, it can be a bit overwhelming, especially when it's developing at the rapid pace of ordinals. Fear not, because I'm looking forward to diving in with Trevor to give you an overview of everything you need to know about NFTs on Bitcoin and the innovation that Vitalik Buterin recently said is bringing builder culture back to the OG blockchain. Before we do, I want to encourage you to sign up for our weekly newsletter if you haven't already at nftnow.com/newsletter. Each week, we distill everything happening in the space into actionable insights straight to your inbox. Without any further ado, let's talk Bitcoin Ordinals with Trevor Owens. Trevor, how we doing? T.O. in the house, live from Puerto Rico. What's going on?
GM, Matt, great to be on the pod here. Excited for this.
I'm excited for this too. I'm ready to talk ordinals. I got my orange t-shirt. As I was saying, this is the only orange shirt I own. I almost always only wear black. This is like a Carmelo Anthony era Syracuse shirt, but I'm here representing.
That's awesome, man. Orange is addicting, dude. I just went to the local store, all the colors of Gatorade, orange, no thought. I'm saying my phone case, orange, just starts to creep up on you and take over once you get bit by the bug.
There it is. And not only do we have Bitcoin orange represented, but we got some pizza as well. I think yours looks a lot better than mine. Mine, I had to make mine quick in the air fryer.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, we'll get all into that, but let's dive in. T.O., give us the brief background. How did you get into the space?
Yeah, so I've been a founder for a decade and a developer working in Web2 space. Got into Bitcoin in 2013, but I was more bullish on like the blockchain technology than necessarily the coin itself. And I'm a very to the ground, go to market is like where I specialize in. So I spent a decade coaching founders in the lean startup methodology. Worked with Eric Ries. Like if you look in the thank you section, paragraph 5, I think it is, you'll see somebody's name in there, the book, and I think that the space took a long time to mature. And so it wasn't really until 2021 where I was like the tipping point where I saw MetaMask, OpenSea, Uniswap, et cetera. And I was like, all right, technology that I always thought was promising that I wasn't sure when it was going to reach maturity is now here, full force. And I had known the founders of Stacks for a long time. I was one of the first advisors for them. And so I hit them up. They had just launched Stacks 2.0, and they wanted me to run the ecosystem venture fund for them. And so I raised a small fund of $4 million. And now we did a second close for about a $6-7 million fund now. And we've made 50 investments across the Bitcoin ecosystem. I'm also an angel investor in a bunch of different startups like NFT Now and on the ETH side as well. And so, I'm just like a founder, entrepreneur, developer, and I spent a lot of time, working with 0 to 1 companies. And now I do that professionally at the Bitcoin Frontier Fund. We kind of rebranded from just a focus on Stacks and now more broadly on Ordinals. And I'm also the CEO of Ninjalerts, which is a Ethereum analytics trading tool for NFT enjoyers, giving you the best push notifications and alerts when things happen on the blockchain. So living in both the continued life as a builder and also as an investor.
Love to see it. And there's a lot to unpack there. But let's get into ordinals. It's been amazing to watch, like, just the growth of that ecosystem in such a short amount of time. And I know you've been really on the front lines there. Shout out to the Not Financial Advice crew, that Twitter space that we host with you on every Tuesday and Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern.
Let's go.
It's been great. But I really feel like that's become one of the best places to learn about the ordinals ecosystem. I know I've learned a lot. And I think a lot of people are still trying to wrap their heads around this. So I'd love to dive into ordinals and, like, let's just take it from the top. Like, how would you describe Bitcoin ordinals to your grandmother?
Yeah, well, my grandmother, that'd be tough because she might not know about NFTs. I would describe it to my grandmother as a way to record data permanently in any form, and also a way that makes a certificate of authentication similar to NFTs for that data to track ownership on Bitcoin. And so I think the really innovative thing about ordinals is that all of the data is on chain, and it's actually much more inexpensive than having a smart contract, which is important for a chain like Bitcoin, where it is very expensive and block space is limited. And so, yeah, it's just a way you can record any type of media, and you can also actually build new kinds of applications, new kinds of Web3 applications that are also different from how Ethereum applications are structured. And that leads to some interesting use cases, some interesting ergonomics that actually make decentralized coordination a little bit easier. So, we're seeing things that people had tried to do on Ethereum that I think are objectively good ideas that may have been limited by the structure of having smart contracts and having a Solidity EVM, that now by just inscribing the raw data actually is a little bit easier. And that's kind of the fascinating thing.
So yeah, it's been amazing to see, essentially, like, inscriptions of media, whether it's a photo, whether it's a meme, whether it's a PFP project, whether it's music, etc., directly on Bitcoin, which wasn't possible before. So, like, how did we get here, and why do you think this is so transformative?
Yeah, so we got here, I would say, kind of by accident. So 2017. SegWit was introduced, which was a upgrade to Bitcoin that created this thing called the segregated witness, which is what SegWit stands for. And in the witness area of the transaction, you can fit, like, a normal Bitcoin block is like 1 megabyte limit, but in that area you can fit up to an additional 3 megabytes. So in total, now you can have 4 megabytes per block. And in addition, that area of the inscription is actually discounted by 75% because, that space, like, it still ends up fitting 1 megabyte within the Bitcoin block. But since it's a total of 4, 75% is like 1 megabyte. So the data is actually stored differently than the rest of the transaction. And so it kind of opened up this avenue for really inexpensive permanent data storage in a way that, like, if you actually do the math in terms of, like, how much it would cost you to have a Dropbox account for life and run an Amazon Web Services server for life, like, there's no way you can get data storage this cheap in a permanent way. And then there's an amazing Bitcoin dev named Casey Rodamore, who was a contributor to Bitcoin Core over the years, and he's considered like one of the top Bitcoin developers in the world. And he was working on this project for like 2 years. And the interesting thing is that Casey is a very unique individual. And so he's the type of person where he is, like, born from the Bitcoin, community, in terms of, like, he fits in with a lot of the laser eye community, some of the maximalists that we always like to kind of dunk on. And so he's kind of like not someone where you had this culture on Bitcoin that they would kind of dismiss everything coming from Ethereum, or they would dismiss a lot of builders saying, oh, you're not from Bitcoin. This is a guy like, the perfect martyr is what I would call him. But then he had the kind of, like, he was always like an instigator. So he had the kind of creativity to, like, want to like try something and break the rules, but also the development skills and the very deep understanding of how Bitcoin works and a knowledge of like a lot of leading edge technologies that even me as a VC for 2 years, who's like kind of on the leading edge of this stuff, was not aware of. That it was like the perfect storm of like, this was the guy to do this. And so he spent like 2 years working on ordinals and inscriptions. Ordinals referring to ordinal theory, which is the way that we actually turn Bitcoin or piece of Bitcoin, Satoshis, into non-fungible tokens that are trackable and tradable throughout the blockchain. And then adding into the inscription element, he also like deployed a very simple MVP. So many factors, like little details that matter. January 20th this year, it just took off like a rocket. And I think that there was like it was also the perfect timing. So it was like perfect person to launch it, perfect timing. We were just coming back from like FTX and that cascade, and we were kind of like at a lull in the market in Web3, something that basically violated all the narratives that we have in the space, that like you can't do this stuff on Bitcoin L1. And now and like the laser eyes trying to like kind of stop it, like they always try to stop everything. But then you had, Udi Wertheimer dropping a 4 megabyte Bitcoin block, which was like the largest Bitcoin block ever done. And when this came in, I think the real reason why it succeeded among the Bitcoin community, where other innovations have failed or have been attacked by like the immune system, so to say, of the Bitcoin maxi community, was because that ordinals actually not only are a cool use case for a lot of users and like actually are different than how NFTs work on Ethereum in a way that provides a unique value proposition, but it increased the fees on Bitcoin. And so when you actually have two people and they're kind of fighting for moral authority in Bitcoin, it's like whoever pays is like in the position of superior, moral authority. It's like, okay, well, if you don't like it, you should pay more, right? Like paying directly to the miners is contributing to the security of Bitcoin. Eventually, the security subsidy on Bitcoin is going to be gone, and it will need to survive the security budget generated by fees. But historically, fees have been so low on Bitcoin that it's been an open-ended question of like, how are we going to make sure Bitcoin is viable in the long term from a people paying enough to support the security and decentralization of Bitcoin. And Ordinals kind of came in and provided that answer. And so while many of the immune system and maxis tried to kind of like cancel it, it only made it stronger. Like it only made it more successful. And we have had hundreds of developers pour into the space. We've had a ton of infrastructure like marketplaces, wallets, and explorers and other tools developed that just didn't exist 4 months ago, and it happened at a lightning, rapid pace, which was just like incredible to be a part of.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to get into there. For those who maybe don't know, maybe some of our listeners who aren't as deep in crypto, who are the laser eyes? What are the maxis, and why was this so controversial?
Yeah, so Bitcoin, like a lot of the reason why people get into Bitcoin is because it's a very like libertarian ideal. It's like we're separating money from the state. Like we're giving people more freedom. We're ending authoritarianism. And so the Bitcoiners, especially like the hardliners, tend to be like way more serious. Like they tend to be like, this is an existential crisis. Like we have to free, the people and separate money from the state. And so, and Bitcoin has also had this culture war dating back to like the 2017, 2018 block size wars, where essentially the community split into two, right? Bitcoin split into Bitcoin, BTC, and then there was Bitcoin Cash and later BSV. And these were like the debates over, do we change the base layer or not? And so people have always viewed Bitcoin as a form of money, whereas I think Ethereum initially started as a utility, as a gas token, right? That this is just a currency just to pay for the network fees, but it's structured a little bit more like a stock or a decentralized stock or a company, in the sense that like there's a foundation, there's a consensus, which was an early part of that whole ecosystem that spun out many of the key technologies like MetaMask and Infura and Etherscan. And so there's been a more kind of centralized approach, whereas in Bitcoin you have Satoshi Nakamoto, no one knows who he is, he's gone. There's no leader. There's literally a vacuum in Bitcoin. And so since the 2017, 2018 phase, there's been kind of like a negativity towards builders. There's been especially negativity towards everything happening off of Bitcoin. So like, the fundamentalist maximalists, I mean, we know there's tribalism and like what we call bag bias in the space where, different communities, because they hold a certain asset, are fighting with each other. And you'll see that just as a natural evolution of human psychology. But in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there's a little more seriousness to it. There's a little more belief in, hey, this is like, we shouldn't change anything about Bitcoin, because if we change it, that's going to actually ruin the properties of Bitcoin as a money, because they call it sound money because it doesn't change and you can count on it. And Bitcoin is designed to be very limited in functionality, because that limit in functionality means the attack surface for hacks and exploits is very low. And so Bitcoin has kind of had like a hostile attitude towards developers. I personally experienced it for a very long time, being in the Stacks ecosystem, trying to build an L2/side chain on Bitcoin. And so like when this came in, previously the Bitcoin maxis kind of act almost like gatekeepers. And, they always say like, we don't like shitcoin. They call Ethereum people like shitcoiners, NFT people shitcoiners, right? And I think a part of that like detachment from what like has been happening in the NFT space, and that kind of like overreaction is caused by the fact that the stuff wasn't happening on Bitcoin, and that they didn't understand it, and that they didn't like experience it, because I was also skeptical of NFTs until I actually started buying and participating. But I think it's also because, it's like the not invented here bias. It's like I see this in corporate innovation all the time. Large companies who are failing to innovate, they look at a startup who's crushing it and they're like, oh, but we could do it better, or like that's not going to be successful. And history just shows like all of the disruption of Silicon Valley and how startups come up and look like a toy and then disrupt big companies. So it's a lot of factors, but essentially it became like a dogma in the Bitcoin community. And ordinals kind of like came in, and the maxis tried to fight it, but they couldn't, because again, it not only did it have a moral superiority in terms of actually solving a problem and actually like paying fees, but it also kind of like I would say like showed the emperor is wearing new clothes. And I think it was actually a signal to developers and other ecosystems that things are going to change here, and that you're welcome to build on Bitcoin. Because previously a lot of developers would be interested in Bitcoin. They'd be like, this is too much effort for me. I just want to build the product. I don't want to have to deal with like people harassing me and asking me questions and, literally like making my life more difficult on Twitter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The laser eyes are quite vocal on Twitter, and their podcast, which I know is a part of the joke as well. So so here's the thing. Like, I think whenever there's a new and exciting ecosystem, people are always intrigued about it, but I think there's a perceived barrier to entry. It's like people don't know how to get started. It's like, where do I go? Bitcoin is great, but like, I'm used to buying NFTs on ETH. Like, so how would someone get started with Bitcoin Ordinals?
Yeah. So the first step would be to get a Bitcoin web wallet similar to MetaMask. The most popular one right now is Xverse. I'm an investor. You can also check out Hero, which is an investor in my fund, and Unisat. Those are the top three. They offer a few different things, but they're pretty similar. And then there's multiple marketplaces. So there's Magic Eden, there's Gamma, there's Ordinals Wallet, OrdSwap, and I think like go and get an ordinal or inscribe. In fact, you can one of the coolest things about ordinals is that you don't need to launch a smart contract to make an ordinal, right? So the whole system is like easier than any like OpenSea storefront. Like it's just you go to websites like OrdinalsBot. Some of the wallets have their own inscription service embedded in them, like Xverse and Unisat. And you can just drag and drop a drag and drop a file, or like a JPEG, an MP3. People have put games directly on ordinals. Like one of the first, I think 500 inscriptions was Doom, the game Doom on ordinals. You just drag and drop a file and you just pay a Bitcoin fee, and boom, it's like forever recorded on Bitcoin. As long as Bitcoin survives, it's going to be there, and it's hosted across all of the nodes on the Bitcoin network.
That's dope. So, I know that there have been already some notable projects that have launched. There's obviously some notable inscriptions as well. Like, what are like the ordinals projects that the layman should be aware of, or the newcomer to the space should have on their radar?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, one of the first notable ones I think was Bitcoin DGods, BTC DGods. That was a very successful mint where what was originally a popular community on Solana that moved to Ethereum and Polygon uh, inscribed a percentage of their ordinals, a percentage of their art onto Bitcoin. There's a lot of projects under like the 1K. There's kind of this pattern of like the lower the number, like the earlier, a little bit the more attractive. So there's Ord Rocks, which was actually like Ether Rocks, just moved and inscribed on Bitcoin. There's Ord Punks, which was using some of the traits of CryptoPunks, but some other traits as well, and algorithm to make a bunch of like CryptoPunk like PFPs sub 1,000. I have a colleague named Grace Ng who has a collection called Diamond Fingers, which is sub 10K, which is like these like 3D middle fingers that say like you can't censor my transactions and NFTs are fun. There's Ordinal Maxi Business is like one of the most recently successful and hyped projects. There's On-Chain Monkey, which is a really good one. There's so many. There's Megapunks from Megapont, which is a really well-known project from the Stacks ecosystem that did ordinals. And of course, we're doing our own project here for Ninjalerts, which is 1,500 Ninja PFPs inscribed on rare pizza sats. So there's a lot going on. I think definitely the pace of projects is not like Ethereum, though. You have a higher barrier to entry because majority of the time the cost of like putting your the ordinals on the blockchain is held by the project creator. So on Ethereum, usually you just launch the smart contract, and that is probably like around an ETH. But then all of the people who mint, they pay the cost of gas to mint the NFT. On ordinals, it's the opposite. The creator has to do all of the inscribing. And so you have a bit of a higher barrier to entry, which I think means that you see a lot less kind of like low effort projects launched on ordinals. We do have our share too, but just like from a scale perspective, there's like, dozen projects launched every single day on Ethereum, and there's like, derivative after derivative after derivative. But on ordinals, it's kind of like a little more, a little less all over the place.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about rare sats. Like, what are they? I know that we recently talked about them in an NFA space. I think it's super interesting as somebody who appreciates the history of the blockchain. But for those who don't know, what is a rare sat?
Yeah, so one of the things about how ordinals works differently than Ethereum is that it's using ordinal theory, right? And so ordinal theory is a way to assign a serial number to every single piece of Bitcoin that's ever been created. And so what you can do is actually we've created this kind of like this backwards history, because for every Ethereum NFT, like you can see in OpenSea or these other platforms, like, oh, this NFT was actually held by Matt, or this NFT was held by Gary V, or
provenance, right?
Yeah, so you can see like who the previous holders were. But for Bitcoin, it's inscribed on Satoshi that already has 13, 14 years of history behind it, right? And so you actually have the serial number based on when the block was mined, and then like you can trace the history of it from the beginning to now. And so we have Satoshis, or we have these ordinals that are on Satoshis that were actually held by Satoshi Nakamoto, or were part of the first Bitcoin transaction where Satoshi sent 10 Bitcoin to Hal Finney, the first person to outside of Satoshi to start working on Bitcoin and to receive Bitcoin. And so we have this like rich history of like, I would almost compare it to like, going to a corner street on New York City and, going with someone who's a historian who can tell you in this building on this corner in New York City, this person lived there. Like if you walk around like Chinatown, New York City, and you take a tour, they're like, Sun Yat-sen had an apartment in this building. This was the person who actually started, the idea of China becoming a nation that led to, the fall of the Qing dynasty. It's like that's the kind of history that you have on these Satoshis, which literally could already be in your wallet. And so those kind of Satoshis are not the there's kind of like a whole universe of things here. Those are like called the exotic sats, where it's like there's a story behind it, there's a history behind it. There's also vintage sats, which just happen to be ones that were mined in the first 1,000 blocks. So those can be from like 2009, maybe early 2010. And then there's something called what we refer to now as the Rodamore rare sat. So this is a rarity index that Casey created. And so the way the Rodamore rarity works is that the first Satoshi in every block, and then the first Satoshi in every key event on Bitcoin has a certain level of rarity. It's evenly distributed throughout time. So you can think of it like, a lot of people call Bitcoin a time chain. And the reference is because Bitcoin is actually really good at syncing state across many different computers, which means that it's similar to like the problem of like syncing time. Like every computer holds the same state of like we're on this block. And so people refer to sometimes like the block number as like whatever time that we're on. And so you can think of every block as like a second on a clock, right? And so an uncommon sat, which is a common sat is like any sat. Uncommon sat is the first sat of every new block, which happens like every second, right? It doesn't happen every second, but like as an analogy, it actually happens every 10 minutes. But as an analogy of like an analog clock with like a second hand, you can then move from the uncommon sats to rare sats, which actually happen every 2 weeks during what's called the difficulty adjustment. That would be like the minute hand of the clock, where it's like the first sat in that difficulty adjustment is considered a rare sat. And then you have an epic sat. An epic sat is the first sat of a halving. So the halving happens every 4 years on Bitcoin. That's where the reward in terms of Bitcoin decreases by 50% every 4 years. And it's kind of like a celebrated event in Bitcoin because it actually decreases the supply of new Bitcoin coming onto the market. And so we have traditionally seen like big price increases in Bitcoin during the halving. And it could also just be unrelated to the halving, but more like cyclical in terms of how markets work, right?
Yeah,
and then
it's like deflationary, and it's also or it's like it feels it has deflationary pressure because it's like there's less supply, and also it's like changes the narrative, right? It tends to like help shift things a little more bullish.
It's like Christmas, it's like people you get
Bitcoin
ready for
Christmas.
You get ready for the holidays. It's like you got to buy gifts for everybody. You see like the economy boost a little bit, and then there's two other levels. That's the epic sats. And then there's legendary sats, which happen every 24 years, which is a cycle in time. And then there's the final sat, the mythic sat, which is only one of, is the first sat that was ever made on Bitcoin, which is unspendable. So it can never be found.
Where is it? So, is it in Satoshi's wallet or?
Actually, I don't know where it is, but the first block is unspendable. So like no one can ever get it. And so this kind of rarity model has these different sats spread evenly throughout time, basically, because even when we get to, the beginning of Bitcoin was like 50 Bitcoin per block, only the first one was an uncommon one. Now it's 6.25 BTC per block, still only the first one is an uncommon one. So these are spread throughout time, and they kind of fit into this very clever rarity model. And the thing to think about, the analogy that someone said was like, if you were to take 75 Olympic-sized swimming pools and fill them full of pennies, that's how many Satoshis that we have right now. And among those, for the rare Satoshis, I believe it is like 349 or something like that would be rare Satoshis. Actually, let me double check so I make sure I get the numbers right, but. It goes. It's there's actually going to be a total of, because every Bitcoin has 100 million Satoshis, so there's going to be 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis by the end of all the Bitcoin being released. But when it comes to the rare sats, there's there's going to be only 7 million uncommon. Yeah, no, I was right. So the total supply of the rare ones is going to be around 3,400, and for the current supply of rares, it's only 369. So fill an 75 Olympic sized swimming pools full of pennies. 369 of those pennies are rare satoshis, according to the rarity the rare designation on the Casey Rodimer Rare Index.
There it is. There it is. And so the Bitcoin Ordinals, the Pizza Ninjas, the project that you're launching with Ninjalerts, right? That is built on rare satoshis from the Bitcoin Pizza transaction. Tell us a little bit about the project and what's up there.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the cool thing about rare sats, and I'm saying rare sats as like the umbrella term for the whole space, including exotic and vintage, is that it allows you to do more creative storytelling, right? And so project creators, artists, etc., are now able to combine like the medium or the paper with which they're doing their art on, the Satoshi, with the art or the story of their art that they're trying to do. And so pizza sats, I think, are not as rare as the uncommon or rare sats. There's actually there's 10,000 Bitcoin, which means there's a trillion pizza sats out there. However, it's a very historic transaction. It goes back to the first verified Bitcoin transaction ever to buy anything, which is also the first physical item. There's some debate about actually maybe someone paying for a JPEG actually before that, but it hasn't been verified. And where a guy named Laszlo was online in the Bitcoin Talk forums, and he paid somebody 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 Papa John pizzas. And so, looking back at like how much that's worth right now, right? Like 10,000 Bitcoin, 30K.
Buyer's
you're
remorse.
Like $300 million, for 2 pizzas.
I hope that pizza was better than this one right here.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like a holiday every year in the Bitcoin community, the day when that transaction happened. And, for people who want to get rare sats, it's like a really good entry rare sat to get. And so I'm a big fan of pizza. Like for me, it's like, Christmas morning, opening presents. That was like the one day a year to look forward to, like most. But then it was like birthday party. You had to have pizza and pizza nights, right? It was like just a part of my childhood. I think it's like, and if you even go back to like the history of civilization, you look into things like a lot of historians say bread is like the most important like invention in human history in terms of like how it formed the basis of like societal construction of families. Like people use the term breaking bread for like reconciliation and peace. And so with an NFT project, I think the most important thing that you want to do is try to create meaningful experiences that can bond together your community. And so identifying like a mission and like having something that's like a theme or something to tie people together. And I think pizza is like the most like a food that's like universally loved across all cultures, like everywhere in the world. And I think it fundamentally represents like community. And so, we are Ninjalerts, and like I was thinking Ninjalerts and pizza sats. And then of course the next thing you think of is like Ninja Turtles. And like I look back at my childhood, I like grew up in the 90s. So like the Ninja Turtles, like 1, 2, and 3 were like the hottest movie in like 1992. And there was like a Super Nintendo game, Turtles in Time, which was like in every single arcade. And so we just kind of like went down this path to try and create a unique project with some amazing art that could bring together our community and also signify the launch of Ninjalerts on Ordinals and on Bitcoin. So that was kind of really the goal, is like on Ninjalerts, we provide some of the best NFT analytics and alerts for Ethereum. And of course, we want to move into Ordinals. And so we decided to do this project to help curate our community, help get the word out. And we've been asking people to make these videos online on Twitter where they will record themselves eating pizza wearing a ninja costume. And this is like a hat tip to like Udi Wertheimer, who did this with Taproot Wizards. But we put this out there, and I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. We got a ton of people. Like I'm getting videos every single day, and it's just been like a super fun experience. And I think that it was really important to do, because now we know who the people are that actually care about the project, right? One of the worst things you can do with any project is launch a project, and like the way you actually try to distribute the opportunity to participate to those early holders is like one of the most important decisions that you have. And being able to just like select the people who care the most, I think is going to be the most important sign of like long-term health for a project.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's been fun to see all the engagement around that, and excited to see what comes of that project. When is it launching?
We haven't announced a date yet, but we're targeting like, end of the month / beginning next month. So
It is. There it is.
yeah.
So, this is obviously super exciting for the Bitcoin community. One of the things that, we've talked about a bit is, I got into crypto through Bitcoin back in 2013. And, I've always really believed in the principles behind it, the decentralization, and like, this idea of having an alternative to the centralized financial system. We talked a little bit about the Maxis critiques and all that, but like there are some people who say like, well, why Bitcoin, right? Why put this on Bitcoin? Even aside from like it's like there's NFTs on ETH, there's NFTs on these other platforms. Like why do you think that like it's important that we be building this on Bitcoin? And I actually just saw Vitalik recently, just this week, said that Bitcoin, but that Ordinals was actually like bringing back builder culture to Bitcoin. So that's pretty interesting and exciting to see too. So I'm just curious to get your thoughts, like why Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there's so many reasons, and I'll just give a few of them. I think that one of the things is that Ordinals took a different direction from NFTs and Ethereum. Like Casey Rodarmore likes to refer to Ordinals as digital artifacts. And he says that all digital artifacts are NFTs, but not all NFTs are digital artifacts. And so the concept is that, again, it's about being fully on chain, where all the data is stored in one network. And so for those who are familiar with the underpinnings of NFTs, you'll know that the majority of them host their media on IPFS, which is a separate system from Ethereum, meaning that there's an external dependency. And so you have data in two different places, but in order for it to be a digital artifact, the condition is that all of the data is in one place, and also that it can't be, it's a complete bearer asset. So what that means is that you can't have any type of smart contract that would limit the ability for the person holding it to control it. Whereas we know in Ethereum, like the flexibility allows you to do unlimited things, which is also a positive. So these are really just merely trade-offs, right? Where on Ethereum, you can actually code functions that would allow me to for you to mint my NFT and then for me to move it out of your wallet through the smart contract if I wrote a different transfer function. On Ordinals, like it's not possible at all, and it will never be possible. And all of the data is in one place. And so that was kind of like a very, like I would say, like highly levered decision, or it's like a very like it's more like a Phillips head screwdriver than it is a Swiss Army knife. You know what I mean? Like an NFT smart contract is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It can do so many things. This is like a Phillips head screwdriver. You can just do one thing, and it does a very important thing. And so it serves a new use case, which is why one of the reasons why it's important is that there will be users and companies out there that we want to onboard into the space where Ordinals will solve the problem better for them, that might bring them into the space where NFTs might not, right? I think the second thing is just that it's Bitcoin. Like it's Bitcoin. It's the most liquidity in the market. It is the largest user base in the market, and it gives credit to the NFT industry. Like here we have, the majority of the capital in the space where, I think Bitcoin dominance right now is like 45%, meaning the capital on Bitcoin is 45% of the entire space, who maybe otherwise dismissed or wasn't even paying attention to NFTs. Now, non-fungible assets are in their backyard. And not only that, it's solving the problem of fees on Bitcoin, making Bitcoin more sustainable. And now you have a big onboarding opportunity within the crypto space that's now going to open up more possibilities for the NFT space. And so I think those will be the two main reasons, that like it solves a new problem, and also that it's going to onboard a ton of new people. Like we saw Michael Saylor, for example, praising Ordinals, someone who previously, been dismissive of NFTs, who came on board, hate him, love him or hate him, but now he's one of us. It won't be long before we see him with a cartoon, PFP on Twitter.
There it is. No, no, I love that. You know, it even in my own experience, it's been really exciting to see a lot of people came into NFT. A lot of people got into crypto like through NFTs, right? And so, especially from the creative space, a lot of people bought their first crypto to buy an NFT, and they don't necessarily like a lot. And for most of them, that was on Ethereum, right? And so for a lot of them, it's like this whole new generation of market entrants who are kind of rediscovering Bitcoin for the first time, which is pretty cool, you know, as someone who you know believes in it and you know thinks that it obviously set the stage for this entire new ecosystem that we're all building within.
100%. And I think it increases collaboration across two communities, which were previously more divided due to tribalism, due to bag bias, in a time when we really need to come together because we're seeing, you know, the administration of the US government really coming hard against the whole space, against exchanges, against, you know, Bitcoin mining, against, you know, different new innovative blockchains, you know, saying that they're securities. And it's a time where if we really believe in this space, we need to work together. Like we're not, you know, we're trying to grow. We're maybe on different teams, but we're still playing the same sport, and we want to grow the sport to as many people as possible. So I think the idea that we can come together and we can support each other across different ecosystems and also learn from one another is probably one of the best outcomes of ordinals.
Yeah, and look, it's been amazing, you know, to see just how fast things have developed, right? Like, you know, it seems like every day there's a new protocol or a new platform or a new project or some new technological development within the ordinal space. You know, one that comes to mind that I remember got a lot of buzz was BRC20. You know, could you talk a little bit about what that is, and also if there are other like developments or things that are like happening in the space you think that we should have our eyes on?
Yeah, totally. So I think it's important for people to understand that one of the things about ordinals is it's not just NFTs on Bitcoin. It's actually a new paradigm of application development on Bitcoin. And so it's the idea of using this arbitrary storage or like using the storage to put any type of information and then being able to index it through node software. So in order to run ordinals, what you're doing is you're actually installing like another app onto the Bitcoin node that's just applying the ordinal theory. So ordinal theory, the serialization of the ordinals is a separate dependency from Bitcoin, but it's actually a very low risk one, and it's a one that doesn't need as much like decentralization because there's very little to disagree on, right? So the more like the riskier the disagreement, or like the more incentive to disagree, or the more difficulty of agreeing, the more decentralization you need and the more guarantees you need to make sure there's no bad actors. So like if you're just talking about like pure money, if you're talking billions of dollars, like you need a lot of guarantees that no one is like acting dishonestly, right? For ordinals, it's just so simple, and all it's doing is like assigning a serial number that it's fairly low risk to add it on top of Bitcoin or to bootstrap it separately from Bitcoin. And so this idea has been carried over to other use cases to kind of create what is, you know, the 20-80 rule, you know, the 20% that gives you 80% of smart contracts essentially. And we say like smart contracts implemented as node software as opposed to on-chain logic. And so with BRC20s, the insight was like that you could just like when you send a transaction to Ethereum, let's say you like buy a fungible token, you buy some Pepe or something like that, right? Or you sell some Pepe. What you're doing is you're just like recording data on an Ethereum block. It's literally just like a text that's put on the Ethereum block, right? But what's happening is that text is then going through the EVM virtual machine, the Ethereum virtual machine, through the coding language that's then taking that data and then updating your account balance with how many of Pepe coin you have. And so with BRC20s, they essentially did the same thing, but they put the way of counting and tracking as an indexer separate from Bitcoin. And so it's kind of like instead of like a full Turing complete programming language, it's kind of like a, you know, again, one purpose tool for fungible tokens. And so you can take this whole paradigm and you can extend it like into any direction where if you want to have a ledger, as long as it's like simple enough to count, the risk may be low enough that it's viable. And I think that this was the real narrative violation, is like that for certain use cases, you can do it in a way where the risk of disagreement may be low enough that it could be viable. And all you need to do is be able to record the data immutably on Bitcoin. And so BRC-20s, I think, are still like pushing the envelope in terms of like how far will this like indexer model without like, because the thing is the indexers don't talk to each other like nodes. It's just like you have a counting system, I have a counting system, and then we compare, right? And then different wallets can like check all of them to see like, hey, what's Matt's count, what's Trevor's count? But you and I are not reconciling our differences like a system of nodes would, like a blockchain would. And so it's a new paradigm of application development where you can do all types of things other than just non-fungible tokens. We've seen fungible tokens, meme coins. We're seeing like game assets being issued. We're seeing domain names. We're also going to see what I'm calling like decentralized front-end applications. So one of the cool things about ordinals and inscriptions is that you can upload any data very easily. You just put it on there, and it's like there. It can like almost never be taken down, right? It never can be taken down. It could probably be taken down like on some of the explorers one by one, but anyone who has a Bitcoin node has that data. And so the idea of decentralized front applications is like, we know on Ethereum, Tornado Cash, for example, you can't take down the smart contract, but we know that governments have gone to the different internet service providers and had the front end be taken down, right? Because that's a centralized point of failure, like the tornado.cash website, right? With inscriptions now, you can just upload that HTML onto Bitcoin, and then people can go to any explorer and communicate with even a smart contract on Ethereum in a way that can't be censored. And so these are some of like the interesting things that like people have considered doing on Ethereum, but didn't quite match with the ergonomics of how the virtual environment is constructed. But with ordinals, it's like so dumb simple and so different that new use cases are being discovered.
That's awesome. I know there's a lot of innovation in the space. Like, what sort of excites you the most about the future of ordinals?
Man, that's an interesting question, tough question. I would say like really just for me, it's like the cultural change. It's like, I think that again, any type of dogma or maximalism is just not good. It's not good for growing any space. A lot of the maximalism is like more interested in it in itself than it is interested in Bitcoin, right? A lot of the maximalists, it's like kind of like a superiority complex. It's a culture of exclusion rather than a culture of inclusion. And I think we need to maximize the culture of inclusion. We need to dial up as hard as we can because we need to bring more people into the space. Like the transition to Web3 is more difficult than the transition to like the internet in the beginning when like you're using AOL dial-up, and you're like, what is this, the internet? Oh, we have chat rooms, it's more of like a shift in mindset in like UX. And so the barrier to entry is big, and we need to be including people as much as possible and collaborating to learn from each other because this technology is hard. And so the thing I'm most excited about is just like the collaboration across Bitcoin and Ethereum about opening Bitcoin up and introducing new use cases, because I ultimately believe if we don't go down this path that we may never reach mass adoption. I think that the money use case only has product market fit if you have all these other use cases on top of it that give people a reason to use Bitcoin multiple times per day. Essentially what Larry Page calls the toothbrush test, where he says that a new disruptive product that's used multiple times per day has the highest chance of reaching mass adoption, where, literally like a toothbrush. And so Bitcoin traditionally has been about hodling and like never using it, never sending it. Now with ordinals, we're creating a digital economy on Bitcoin where people are actually pricing things in Bitcoin, where people are thinking in terms of Bitcoin as a digital currency on the internet first before we go into the real world. And now we're unlocking DeFi, we're unlocking other types of NFT use cases where people are actually putting music on ordinals, where like people have always talked about on Ethereum, like using stems and then constructing them into songs on Ethereum. And that's been something that's like had a lot of complexity due to smart contracts. Actually on ordinals, it's 10 times simpler. And so we're already seeing people mix music in this way. Like we need every advantage that we can get. And I think that, we have Ethereum. It's like we have the Air Force and the Navy now, working together in this battle to onboard the masses to this new space.
Boom. Super exciting times. What's next for you in Ninjalerts? I know that there's the V3. Tell us a little bit about everything on that front.
Yeah, totally. So Ninjalerts started in the fall of 2021 when I was tired of being addicted to trading NFTs because of all the time that it took up, and having I have like the Samsung G9 monitor, which is like the super ultra widescreen 49-inch monitor, and that monitor would be full when I'm trading NFTs. Like it would be packed in terms of like Etherscan, like the exact time, Discord, Twitter, everything, just to follow what's going on. And Ninjalerts came out of solving my own problem of being like, the simplest thing was, hey, I know who some of the best traders are, and why can't I just follow what they're trading directly and get push notifications whenever something happens? Why can't I subscribe to a smart contract? I know with the NFT that's going to launch, why can't I just subscribe to the smart contract? Tell me when the minting starts. Tell me when they're going to reveal things. And so this is how it started. We were able to onboard a large community of users on Ethereum. It's a very useful product. Like it solved the problem for me. It allowed me to like have more balance in my life in terms of like when I got into NFT trading, because I was making a lot of money and like I got addicted to it. I like stopped going out of like my apartment. Like I was like, my apartment was like dark. It was like I didn't clean in a while. I didn't shower. Like I was like so addicted and like so needing to stay on top of the market that I lost like that balance. And so with Ninjalerts, like that's kind of the goal, is like through the web app and mobile app, we try to give people an easier way to stay on top of the market. And we just launched version 3, which is like a massive upgrade in terms of our data pipeline, performance, in terms of the functionality. We launched a real-time leaderboard of like who the top wallets are in terms of what profits and flips they're making. And we're going into ordinals. So, we want to make it like in ordinals, there's still like not a lot of tooling. And I think the first phase of developers that came into the space have now like very long roadmaps. Like they've kind of like solidified into their direction. And there's still like a lot of white space and opportunities for more builders. And if we can make the tooling better in terms of giving people better data, giving them better understanding of what's happening on Bitcoin and that the other traders are doing, I think that will be useful to a lot of people.
Very excited to see it. We have our rapid fire segment, bullish or bearish. Let's get into it. I know we chatted a little bit about this earlier in the week. Bullish or bearish, Blur?
Dude, I don't want to be, I'm definitely bearish, and I think that, I think people should really like, who knows what's going to happen, but people should definitely be aware of what's happening over there with the farming incentives and kind of the risk of what's going to happen to not only the space, but to the Blur token holders when if and when the season 2 airdrop is concluded. Like there could be some real risk there, unfortunately.
No, there's a lot to unpack there, and we've done some coverage on the site as well. And
but I'm bullish on the tooling though. But I'm definitely
farming.
Super concerned about the token.
Right. Bullish or bearish? Instagram Threads.
Oh man, I think bearish as well. You're giving me all the things I'm bearish about first.
Let's see if the trend continues. Bullish or bearish ETHscriptions?
I would say I'm also bearish, but I was, I thought it was like a pure derivative at first, but actually there's a lot of there's actually a lot of use to it on Ethereum. Like we saw with ETHscriptions that the cost of like making NFTs on ETHscriptions is like 80% lower than with a smart contract. I just don't think that there's enough of a development community or that building up that development community because it's such a different approach in terms of how you develop applications. It will be hard to catch on, I think. But I think it's like an amazing effort, and maybe it'll unlock some really useful use cases or some useful use cases that can tie into the existing paradigm on Ethereum. So actually, I would say I'm slightly bullish on it, I'd say.
There it is. Last one. Bullish or bearish, Magic Eden?
Definitely bullish, man. Definitely bullish. They're doing a great job. They're doubling down on Bitcoin. Just great team, great community, and yeah, super bullish.
It is. Trevor, always a pleasure. Great conversation. I think this will help a lot of people understand the Ordinals ecosystem a bit better. And yeah, excited to speak again soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt. Great time.
Love that conversation. There's a lot to unpack there about everything going on in the Bitcoin ordinal ecosystem. I thought Trevor did a great job giving us an overview of the innovations that are taking place, the conversations that are happening, and new elements like BRC20 and rare sats that are driving a lot of conversation and new projects as well. As I mentioned, I got into the crypto space through Bitcoin in 2013, and it's incredibly exciting to see a whole new generation of users rediscovering the original blockchain, and really looking forward to seeing how the community over there continues to develop and grow. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'd encourage you to tune into our Not Financial Advice Twitter space every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the NFT Now Twitter account, co-hosted with Trevor and Ninjalerts. It's the place to go to keep up on what's happening in the markets and also the Bitcoin Ordinals ecosystem. It's a great crew, vibes are on point, and there's a lot of valuable insights to be gleaned from it each week. Thanks so much for tuning in again, and we will catch you next week on the NFT Now podcast.